Welcome back to Pokemon Radical Red without moves. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'd recommend watching it first, but it's by no means required to understand what's going on in this part. Especially since access to new Pokemon makes a lot of the strategies in part 1 obsolete, so without further ado, let's get back into the run. During the fight against Misty, Regenerator made its debut as one of the best abilities for a no-moves playthrough because a lot of opponents don't do enough damage to handle switching between two Regenerator Pokemon. This ability is why majority of the required non-boss battles from now on are going to be super easy. I can just stall for poison damage or struggle since the relatively weak Pokemon are under the level cap of the next boss battle. Just being able to chain Audinose makes level grinding much quicker now too. There's not much else to talk about between Misty and Lieutenant Surge for this reason, and because it's a short section anyway. He only has special attacking moves and an Alolan Raichu with Nasty Plot. Physical attacks are much easier to counter with Intimidate and Poison Point, so this isn't going to be an easy one. His Pincurchin sets up the electric terrain, which powers up his electric moves enough that they will do slightly more than the Audino heals, which doesn't sound too bad, but it adds up. And remember, critical hits are an eventuality, so it's worth playing around. To do this, I switch between Audino and Krokorok, so I'm immune to electric moves and take little skull damage. My Audinos are also paralyzed before the battle, so they can't get burned and take extra chip damage. Pincurchin's moves aren't a problem, his ability is, however. He'll keep using those moves for a while, but eventually decide to switch without running out of them. The Pokemon replacing her is Vikavolt, who has the scary move Bug Buzz. It does about 45% of my Audino's health, and that's the one with good special defense IVs. I need a Pokemon that can tank 10 Bug Buzzes, but what Pokemon without Regenerator can do that? Shedinja, how could I forget? Be it not taking damage or not using moves, you've always helped me. Huh, too bad you can only evolve into Shedinja via Duskstone in this ROM hack. I can get them now that I have cut though. Just cut the tree on Route 9, fight some tedious battles, and enter Rock Tunnel. Run all the way back to Route 2, get the HM for Flash, run all the way back, and enter Rock Tunnel. The only two fights worth mentioning are this one where Braixen knows the trapping move Fire Spin. Flash Fire stops that move altogether, so it's still pretty standard. The other one features a Carbink with Stealth Rocks, a move that will hurt my Pokemon every time I switch, so every single turn basically. Because of it, I have to activate Poison Point early, which isn't too bad since Carbink is the opponent's lead even though it rarely uses Flail. As long as it doesn't get super lucky with Ancient Power boosts, my Audinos will heal all the damage they take from Stealth Rocks and Ancient Power. Same goes for all the other attacks. This fight just got me worried about future ones with Stealth Rocks. After leaving Rock Tunnel, I can go all the way to the Celadon department store. On the 4th floor, evolution stones are sold, including the dusk stones that I need. Meet Trouble and Double, who are only used for their shared ability Wonder Guard. Who needs things like staying on par with their opponent's level, individual values, and effort values? Effort and individuality are for losers, and winners only need Wonder Guard. For real though, stats don't matter since training Shedinja in defense or special defense won't help when its 1 HP gets taken out by any super effective move, since those aren't blocked by Wonder Guard, and attack and special attack don't really matter when you don't attack, so... Mega Magnetric is already strong, but it also has Charge Beam. Raising special attack is kind of a huge problem in a no moves run, since I can't lower it like I can with physical attacks with Intimidate, and all Pokemon will take too much damage to regenerate or just faint. I can prevent any funny business by switching between Houndoom and Shedinja, so I'm immune to his fire moves along with everything else. It's worth mentioning that I thought I would need to count PP in this fight by jotting it down somewhere, but the app I was using to keep track of PP only allows 10 things, and writing down PP is so tedious that I refuse to do it unless absolutely necessary. Instead, keep track of important moves PP, like how after Mega Magnetric runs out of Flame Burst, he has no moves that affect Shedinja, so he switches into Pinchurchin. Lieutenant Surge is now officially out of moves that affect Shedinja, so I should be able to struggle stall all of his Pokemon. Because of his lack of moves that affect me, he'll switch around whenever Shedinja's in, so switching between my two Shedinjas every turn won't work. Instead, I switch between Audino and Shedinja mostly, but also can speed things up by switching between my Audinos that take more damage than they heal, but as long as I'm healthy enough to survive a critical hit, I can heal them up later on turns the opponent switches. A ton of switching and opponent's moves later, and Pinchurchin is finally entirely out of PP. But like with the boss AI before, Lieutenant Surge decides to switch aimlessly instead of struggling to death. That's where Trapinch comes into play. With the ability Arena Trap, any non-flying or non-levitating Pokemon can't switch. This means they'll have to use Struggle on the turn I switch Trapinch out for another Pokemon. The following turn they'll switch out, but as long as I switch Trapinch in on the same turn the Pokemon I'm trying to get to use Struggle on switches in, they'll eventually faint. One thing I forgot to account for was that Struggle affects Shedinja. So long as the enemy won't faint from using that move, they'll sometimes attack Shedinja with it. At first, I was confused and thought opponents would always use Struggle on Shedinja since it takes it out. But what's actually happening is the same thing as always. Depending on the Pokemon, they'll struggle a couple times before switching, but never struggle if they'll faint after using it. As much as I didn't want to, I had to consider if continuing the fight with one Shedinja was a viable strategy, since I thought I would need two in order to not get swept by Raichu, and decided to keep going because I refused to count PP. It seemed scary at first, but really I just kept doing what I've been doing. Have a Pokemon in that is affected by Raichu's moves and switch into Shedinja, so she uses the PP, and because she doesn't have a move to affect it, she'll be switched out, so I still slowly drain PP no problem. Except when she runs out of Volt Switch. She'll start to use Nasty Plot, which she'll also use on the turn she'd normally switch on with Shedinja in. Fortunately for me, Houndoom's Psychic Immunity allows me to control her move order to safely get the Raichu to switch after a while. Repeat many times and she'll run out of Nasty Plot first. At +0 special attack, I can safely switch between Audinos to speed things up. I have to send in Trapinch, so she'll actually use Grass Knot instead of aimlessly switching until it finally turns into Struggle. The Vikavolt has Levitate, so I can't trap it. But oh, what's this? He's the last Pokemon, so he can't switch anyway. Yeah, you really got me, Lieutenant Surge. Somehow I managed to win despite Vikavolt still having one move left. Now that I can use Fly outside of battle, backtracking is a lot more convenient. I don't want to count the amount of times I've had to run through Mount Moon trying to get my Pokemon paralyzed or get something else I needed. Brendan challenges you to a fight before you can enter Route 11 or Diglett's Cave, but his Calm Mind Lunatone does too much damage for me to struggle stall, so I'll just come back later when I'm a higher level. No. Erika leads with a Rillaboom that will always use Swords Dance against my team, so I have to switch in Roselia on the turn after to try for the poison. He doesn't have a move to affect Shedinja, so he'll switch. With the grassy terrain up, Audino takes too much damage from Giga Drain, so it's best to switch between Shedinja and Audino to tank the Ancient Powers. Even with the Ancient Power stat boost, it doesn't do enough to matter, and once that runs out, he'll switch too. Until Rillaboom is low, which takes a while since grassy terrain heals grounded Pokemon on both sides, Rillaboom will use a couple moves that ultimately don't matter and Meganium switches in for a turn. When one more instance of poison damage is enough to take Rillaboom out, Erika keeps Meganium in until he uses Struggle a couple of times. Serperior, the main threat, is in next. Leaf Storm, Leech Seed, Dragon Pulse, and Giga Drain is a pretty scary moveset made worse by the ability contrary to inverse stat changes. Namely, Leaf Storm now raises special attack by 2 stages. My Shedinja ends up getting Leech Seeded, so I lose that attempt. After Meganium struggles again, I'm in the same situation as before, but this time with a more optimal team. Why is one of my 2 Shedinjas always fated to Meganium struggle? Say it with me now. I refuse to count PP if I don't have to. Once more, Sap Sipper comes in handy. By switching in Go-Go on the first turn, it doesn't matter which grass move Superior goes for, and now switching between him and Shedinja is enough to safely stall Superior out of Dragon Pulse. That will cause him to switch against the Sap Sipper Go-Go with only grass type moves left. That leaves the Venusaur, who doesn't really have any threatening moves. To get the opposing Pokemon to run out of PP, I do have to switch in Trapinch, and after all opposing Pokemon struggle to death, I get the Rainbow Badge. Neutralizing gas, but that stops my abilities from working. Whatever will I do? Oh. These Team Rocket grunts in front of the door are actually a problem though. They both have a Pokemon with Swords Dance and moves that affect Shedinja. Fortunately, they can be intimidated, so I don't get hit by +4 attacks that would do too much damage to regenerate. Staraptor's flying typing is very useful here since he's immune to Earthquake. That still leaves Audino to get hit by mostly Rock Slide and sometimes Slash. Before, Howl was an issue because I couldn't lower attack fast enough. But now I only lower attack by 1 stage as he raises attack by 2 stages, netting him +1 attack. And I can only lower attack every other turn when I switch in Staraptor. Once Slash is the last move left, it does so little damage without a critical hit that I can safely switch between my 2 Audinos. +6 Struggle still does big damage, but Arbok can't hurt me, so I win that fight. Sir Viper is way more threatening with Swords Dance. I don't even have the option to burn her, since she has a 33% chance to heal the burn at the end of every turn because of Shed Skin. I have to PP stall her out of Crunch and Belch too, which are both resisted by Krokorok. I definitely need to level up for this to work, so I decide now is a good time to fight Brendan, because as a reward for defeating him, he gives you a Lucky Egg to boost experience gained. With him out of the way, I can also pick up the item finder, which will be needed later. I catch a Scraggy and a Hippopotas to try in the fight. I thought the Sandstorm might be a good way to deal with this Viper, but it's too slow and causes my Audinos to take even more damage when they already take too much damage to Crunch. Scraggy helps a lot though. She's an extra Intimidate Pokemon with better IVs from the raid and better typing for this fight that 4 times resists Dark. I can stall out most Crunches without taking too much damage, but the turns that the Grunt decides to go for Swords Dance are random, and without me knowing them, I'll sometimes switch an Audino when it should have been Krokorok. Eventually, you'll know Viper's out of attacking moves when she starts spamming Haze. The rest of the fight shouldn't be too bad, just another Sandslash, and oh my god, it has Swords Dance too. At least it can be poisoned. After 5 tries, I finally get it to activate. No, just kidding, it didn't, and I have to do the whole fight again. Thankfully, I get it first try this time, and with Sandslash using Dig so often, it faints pretty painlessly. Last in is Skuntank, who wouldn't be an issue to struggle stall, and knowing that, he would rather faint on his own terms and use his Memento of all things. The fight against Giovanni features a Mega Kangaskhan who's actually pretty great for me to fight since hitting twice gives an extra chance to proc Poison Point. The real issue is his Honchkrow, who will always land a critical hit due to having 3 critical hit modifiers in the form of the item Scope Lens, ability Super Luck, and multiple moves with enhanced critical chance. After Honchkrow fades, my Autonos are too weak to survive multiple critical hits from Rhyperior, which is bad since she has an enhanced critical hit move too in the form of Drill Run. Once I get his lead Nidoking to switch due to Shedinja, if he switches into Honchkrow I lose since Honchkrow one-shots Rose Raid and I need her to also poison Kangaskhan. If only I had a Poison Point Pokemon with better typing for fights like this one. Nidoran Male, you came back to me. It's gonna be just like old times, man. Just us guys. Since I was training with the Dexnav, he has great IVs overall. I was still pretty early in the chain, so I didn't expect a shiny. I don't know how early the shiny rate increases, but wouldn't be surprised if it already did since I was already getting 3-star Pokemon. While grinding Nidoran's level, I caught a ton of 3-star regenerator Autonos so I can have 2 with perfect health, defense, and special defense IVs. I also changed my team's natures to relaxed for plus defense minus speed. Wait a second, that Nidoking is a Nidoqueen! Now that I have a Pokemon that can survive a critical Drill Peck, I want Honchkrow to be the first Pokemon Giovanni switches into. Citrus Berries help Autono survive an extra Drill Peck, and a Sucker Punch that will never connect with my Pokemon that he'll use when they're low helps too. When Honchkrow's low, I send in Staraptor to accidentally beta switch into Nidoking, which is just a free tick of poison on the turn he switches back. The turn Nidoking is going to switch out again is a perfect one to send in my Autono to heal. After poisoning Mega Kangaskhan, I switch between Autono and Shedinja to heal the regenerators back up even more. The last threat is Rhyperior, who I try to poison, and when that doesn't work, go for Plan B, and lower her attack enough where I can freely stall out PP by switching between Autonos, since she would need multiple consecutive critical hits on the same Autono to do enough damage. He does some switching, but it's too late as she's out of PP for good stab moves, so eventually I trap her for struggle. I can finally catch a Pokemon with the ability Pressure, but it's too late for that ability to come in handy since Regenerator also keeps my Pokemon healthy in addition to stalling out PP. When I reach the top of the tower, I save this old man and he hands me a Pokeflute, so now I have something to do while I wait for my Pokemon to get beat up. With the Pokeflute, I can now wake up the 2 Snorlaxes. In the spirit of the challenge, I decide to catch them without using moves. So there's 30 minutes of my life I'll never get back. They're both holding Leftovers, an amazing item for this run, way better than a 25% heal once. Now I effectively heal 39% of Autono's health each turn, and if I was getting low enough for the Citrus Berry to activate, I probably wasn't going to survive much more attacks anyway, so this is way better for long fights, which strangely enough, every fight in this playthrough is. There's also 2 more Leftovers under where the Snorlaxes were, so in total I have 4. Arrival 1 in Silphco leads with a Staraptor. By leading with my own, he'll go for Brave Bird, which will be completely healed with Leftovers Regenerator, while his Staraptor takes recoil damage. Next, she'll use Close Combat, which doesn't have recoil and will do way too much damage to Autono, so Shedinja it is. By switching between these 2, Staraptor will feint recoil pretty quickly. Electivire can't do enough damage to combat Leftovers Regenerator either, and once again I stall out Close Combat with Shedinja. Before running out of PP, Jumpluff is sent in. Jumpluff will be doing a lot of damage thanks to Swords Dance and Double Edge, but Double Edge is a bit of a double-edged sword. Oh, and she completely takes herself out with the recoil, but I lose Houndoom, who I absolutely needed for Charizard. When I finally get back to this part of the fight, Jump Bluff not using Double Edge the first turn is enough to manipulate the AI into always attacking, since it sees Double Edge would take out the Pokemon that's in at the start of the turn. Azumarill can't hurt Shedinja, so he immediately switches out. Charizard, aka the biggest threat on Rival 1's team, aka Mega Charizard, why did they think this was okay, is in next. You already know why Houndoom is here. After absorbing a drought-boosted flamethrower, I send an odd note to take Air Slash, which doesn't go quite as well, but it's good enough. Even without a critical hit, Audino is losing chunks of HP every time. I still have good enough odds of getting through this, since Air Slash has a 5% chance to miss, and once one Audino inevitably faints without any critical hit, I can switch into the other Audino for free, so it heals to a good enough range to tank even more hits. And of course when I switch into Staraptor to soak a hit, that's when Charizard misses. Right after, Charizard runs out of Flamethrower and Air Slash, only leaving Solar Beam and Dragon Pulse, so he's not a threat anymore. In fact, none of his Pokemon are threats anymore, so I'm gonna skip to the part where they struggle. Once again, with only one Arena Trap immune Pokemon, I can trap the other ones and force them to struggle until the last Pokemon has no option but to struggle as well. The next fight is a multi-battle with Brendan, which is a pretty interesting twist for this challenge, since although Brendan can attack, I lose 3 team slots. Turn 1, the Incineroar usually uses Fake Out on my side, while Grimmsnarl sets up Light Screen. That's bad, since Brendan has all special attackers, then Grimmsnarl tricks his Lightning Tail to either one of us as Incineroar parting shouts to bring out one of the greatest threats, Mawile. After it takes out Gardevoir, Exploud is sent in. This is one of the deciding turns of the fight. I want him to use Flamethrower on Mawile, but he'll usually go for Focus Blast on Grimmsnarl, which doesn't even take him out, so Exploud wastes another turn on the low threat Pokemon, giving Mawile an opportunity to take him out. Sceptile can hit Focus Blast on Mawile, but Mega Evolving turns him into Dragon type, not that we had much of a chance at this point anyway. This time, I bring Staraptor, Nidoqueen, and Shedinja. I poison the Incineroar on the Fake Out turn, and when Grimmsnarl uses Trick, it's on my Pokemon, so Gardevoir isn't slowed, allowing him to take out the Grimmsnarl and damage Mawile before fainting. Since Shedinja's in on this turn, Archer will switch in Eagle Slash. The AI will always try to attack Shedinja if it can, so I switch to Staraptor, who is immune to the incoming Shadow Claw and intimidates both physical attackers. This makes it so Exploud lives the play rough, which gives him another chance to hit Mawile with Flamethrower, and he luckily does this time. Incineroar is in for a while, and with another Intimidate, Exploud lives a Fake Out while Eagle Slash continues to be thwarted by the same switching order. Exploud thanks Staraptor for saving his life twice by boombursting the field, leaving us both weak enough to faint to Hyper Voice. This is still potentially winnable. Sceptile can easily deal with Primarina and then Incineroar, leaving 2 Pokemon on the right side. Luckily, Sceptile hits Focus Blast on Houndoom for a one-hit KO, leaving a single Eagle Slash. But due to him resisting Brendan's strongest move against him, along with Leftovers Recovery paired with King Shield, Sceptile is eventually knocked out, leaving just my 2 Pokemon. Unfortunately, with Staraptor knocked out, I can't bait him into a Shadow Sneak and King Shield loop. After he runs out of King Shield, he'll just spam Shadow Sneak, so PP stalling isn't an option, meaning I lose. I decided now's a good time to get some Rocky Helmets, an item that hurts Pokemon that make contact with the holder. This would have definitely been useful earlier in some battles where contact moves were the main problem, like Survivor with Swords Dance and Crunch, but not against Swords Dance Pokemon with non-contact moves like Earthquake and Rock Slide. It doesn't end up being necessary as I get lucky with how things go in order here. Exploud hits 2 Flamethrowers on Mawile at low enough health where Fake Out finishes him. Sceptile sent in while Aegislash is in a useless loop, so he can completely wipe the left side while I keep distracting the Sword and Yield Pokemon AO, allowing Sceptile to slowly take him out. That just leaves Houndoom, who thankfully gets hit by a Focus Blast. Brendan, that was awesome. We make such a great team. Let's take down this powerful leader together. I know it'll be tough, but if we combine our strength again, I know we can do it. Oh, okay, that's cool. It's just that this is by far the hardest fight in the playthrough so far, and it makes all the other fights look like being a junior, but okay, whatever. Now, why do I say this is so difficult? Let's just start the battle and see what turn 1 looks like. Oh, Sand, why not? Stealth Rocks 2? Awesome. Oh, Roar, you shouldn't have. Stealth Rocks and Sand both take Shedinja out instantly, but the constant damage is going to be a huge problem for the entire fight. Or, well, it would be if there wasn't an ability that reflects status moves in the form of Magic Bounce. While chaining Hatina, I find a shiny one with the wrong ability. That's shiny number 3. If you guessed 2, I bet you're feeling pretty silly right about now. I try the fight with a fully trained Hatterene. Giovanni will switch between Stealth Rock and Earthquake, so I switch between Staraptor and Hatterene. After only using a couple of instances of the 20 PP move Stealth Rock, Giovanni will switch. This is actually a bad thing, because it will force me to continuously have to switch into Hatterene whenever Hippowdon is in, which makes it so I can't heal my odd nose during this time. This is only made worse by Hippowdon being Giovanni's switch-in whenever another Pokemon switches on his team. It's worth mentioning that Hatterene is going to get attacked if the Pokemon I switch from has low health that the AI recognizes it could take out the originally in Pokemon with. I test out how the AI reacts to this by just throwing Hatina in fresh after catching it. This time Hippowdon will always go for an attack the turn Hatina is in. This lets me bait him into using an attacking move and then Stealth Rock for an exploitable loop with Magic Bounce. After using all Stealth Rock PP, Hippowdon will use Roar, which will reflect back to him. This time it brings out Excadrill with Earthquake, Rock Slide, Iron Head, and Swords Dance. All I can do here is switch between Staraptor and Audino so as to take no damage from Earthquake and as little damage from Rock Slide while lowering his attack. If he decides to use Swords Dance too much before running out of Earthquake and Rock Slide, I lose. But if I can get to the point where he only has Swords Dance and Iron Head, I can force him to switch by bringing Shedinja in. You would think he'd run out of Earthquake before Rock Slide due to Earthquake having 5 less PP, but the turns Excadrill uses Swords Dance are mostly on the ones I switch into Staraptor, so it's actually the opposite. Like I said, Hippowdon will always come in if Giovanni switches himself, and without Stealth Rock PP, he immediately roars, which would make Shedinja faint if it's brought in. I have to either switch to it at the start of the turn or bounce the roar again. Garchomp is basically Excadrill 2.0, having Earthquake, Rock Slide, Swords Dance, and Dual Chop. What makes this an upgrade though is that he'll commonly use Dual Chop to deal a huge amount of damage to my Audinose and Staraptor. Couple this with his pattern of typically using Swords Dance on the turn I switch into Audino instead of Staraptor to make him run out of Earthquake first, which just makes things worse. This Pokemon is an important one to count PP on because once he runs out of Earthquake, he'll use Dual Chop on Audino, so you have to switch between Shedinja and Audino right when this happens. If you want that Staraptor, you'll need to stay alive. Except now, when he uses Swords Dance, I just lose, since Staraptor will faint to any non-Earthquake attack, and attacks will be at +6, so I need to change up my strategy for this Pokemon somehow. Poltegeist has Shell Smash and special attacks, which would be scary, but with Shadow Ball being the only move to affect Shedinja, and it wasting stored power on the turn I switch back into the Bug Shell Pokemon, It isn't hard to PP stall until it switches itself once it's out of Shadow Ball. The Kangaskhan is an issue if it comes out while the Sandstorm is up. I can't switch into Shedinja to be immune to his normal attacks or Power Up Punch, and I don't think I have to explain to you how strong a double Power Up Punch boosted Mega Kangaskhan is. The only good news is that the Sandstorm will eventually subside, allowing Shedinja to come in. He'll still be doing a ton of damage with Crunch to the point I need both my Autonos to come in, and even then, he does enough damage to take them out without even needing Crunch to lower defense on the first hit. To get Kangaskhan in without Sandstorm, I can stall it out while Hippowdon spams Roar since Stealth Rocks aren't up. Sure, Shedinja is sent in this turn, but just as quickly it's sent out before the weather damages it. Repeat until the Sandstorm subsides. My team gets whittled down enough to the point where something will have enough PP to take out Pokemon I still need for later in the fight. Realizing I don't need Trap Hinge to trap Pokemon when Stealth Rocks are up, I try poisoning Garchomp with my Rocky Helmet Nidoqueen, but not only is that RNG reliant, my team still takes too much damage. The main problems I need to deal with are the high damage physical threats. I figure getting them burned to lessen damage will be more valuable than them feigning faster since I'll heal the lessened damage anyway. As a bonus, I can also burn the poison immune Excadrill. After getting my fire abilities confused, I kept a Centiskorch with the correct one. When I first tried this out, Centiskorch didn't burn the Excadrill, but Rocky Helmet ended up putting in a lot of work and took it out thanks to Centiskorch's steel resistance, allowing him to survive enough attacks. Unfortunately, this leaves him weak enough to feint to the second Power Up Punch, but I do get the burn. The misfortune continues for Shedinja when Audino with lowered health and defense makes it so the AI goes for Crunch. I take some time to think about what the real issue with this fight is. The biggest problem is that Sandstorm is constantly being put back up when Hippowdon is sent back in. Eventually, when all PP runs out and Giovanni switches in Poltegeist to destroy my team, without Wonderguard's assistance I can't simply stall by switching. So even if I get all 3 Pokemon luckily burned 30 minutes into the fight, I'll still lose. It's time for a weather ability that will replace Sandstorm and not damage Shedinja. Oh, and in case you're wondering, safety goggles aren't in the game, at least not in 2.1. Now, when my team is low from fighting the Roarden Excadrill, who I can damage since one of my Audino's is holding Rocky Helmet, I can bring in Shedinja to force the switch and predict the incoming Hippowdon, so I bring in Audino. With Hatina instead of Hatterene, I already PP stalled him out of Stealth Rock, so on the incoming Roar I bring in Pelipper, who sets up the rain, meaning it's safe for Shedinja to be roared out. This time, Hatina is brought in, prompting the AI to switch into the Steel-type Excadrill again, so I just do the same thing once more while healing my Audino's to prepare for other Pokemon. Another great thing about the rain is that Leftovers heals Staraptor instead of just cancelling out Sandstorm damage, meaning he'll be healthy enough to survive future attacks. I reflect the Roar and Kangaskhan is dragged out. Mega Kangaskhan hitting twice will quickly turn into her weakness due to Rocky Helmet, and she faints without even getting in a Power-Up Punch since Shedinja doesn't have to worry about weather. Giovanni uselessly brings in Excadrill once more, and like before, so long as I don't switch into Pelipper on the turn he predictably switches into Hippowdon, I'm safe. Hippowdon is low on Roar PP, so Giovanni just switches into Garchomp himself. My Staraptor gets healed on the Earthquake turns, and Audino with Rocky Helmet makes Dual Chop that Garchomp will always use against a low health Staraptor hurt him. Due to this move hitting twice, like Kangaskhan, he feints quickly before setting up too many Sword Stances. Now, Giovanni switches between Excadrill and Hippowdon. I decided to speed up Excadrill's damage since I don't want Stealth Rocks to deal too much damage to Hippowdon yet by switching in my Hatina to bait the Iron Head and then switching into my Rocky Helmet Audino. This makes Giovanni bring out Poltergeist, who even with the Shell Smash will use Shadow Ball and Stored Power predictably, allowing my Staraptor to fully heal. Once it runs out of Shadow Ball, Hippowdon is brought back in. At this point in the fight, by simply switching to Infirm Shedinja, Poltergeist and Excadrill will switch into Hippowdon, who I continuously thwart with Drizzle. All of this switching slowly whittles down Giovanni's team until they faint to Stealth Rocks or struggle. After all that, I finally hecking win, and man was I on top of the world. That was such a satisfying and fun fight. I just love how even though the battle was super tough and required a super specific team, my Pokemon are all pretty healthy, save for Audino who got hit by a +6 struggle. That's just how fights in this playthrough go, I suppose, since you have to build your team to be able to survive everything. But once again, I'm going to need a break, so I'm going to relax a bit before going on. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see how I take on the Pokemon League, if I even get there, make sure to subscribe and let me know your thoughts on the video in the comments maybe? I'm sure it can't get much worse than this, right?